How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to 10 cheap and fast coupes that cost less than £20,000. All 5 coupes on this list, 1 costs less than £20,000, 2 will do 0 to 60 in 5 seconds or less, and 3 have more than 300 brake horsepower. Remember that £20,000 is for the UK market, other countries may have different prices. And don't forget that whenever you're buying a second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance, all that good stuff is important to remember. But before we begin, let me know in the comments down below, do you guys prefer coupes or saloons, and why? Remember to like and subscribe for more weekly car content, but without further ado, let's get into the video. Let's kick this list off with the 3rd generation Audi TTS, which hosts a 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, putting out 305 brake horsepower, which takes it from 0 to 60 in around 4.6 to 4.7 seconds, depending on whether you go for an auto or a manual. This TT sits on the VW MQB modular platform, which is the same as cars like the Mark 7 Golf, Mark III A3, and the Skoda Octavia, and the TTS sits below the more savage TTRS, which takes a slightly larger 2.5-litre inline 5 instead, as well as a few more performance focused features. The TTS is teed up to compete against cars like the 718 Cayman, and to be honest, the interior on it is actually really nice considering the slightly lower price point. It gets a specific aggressive body kit too, and a bunch of smaller details throughout. Owners generally gas up how good the interior is on this car, and in the right spec you'll find quilted leather TTS branded Super Sport seats in a wide variety of colour choices, and that colour reflected on the dashboard as well, not forgetting the flat-bottomed wheel, as well as the generally luxurious feel throughout. If you get the tech pack too, it will be useful inside as well. Having been in one, I can confirm the front seats are a very comfortable but very sporty place to be, although the back seats are pretty rough for anyone of an average height. It's been noted by many journalists as a sweet spot between the standard road TTs and the track-focused RS, in that you could take it to a track day and it would be okay to drive, especially because of its quattro drivetrain giving you bags of grip, if a little bit of understeer, but it's also a massive pleasure to drive around as your daily with comfortable though slightly lowered suspension. These start at around £18,000 with high mileage, and 20 grand will get you a 2015 example with around 40,000 miles on the clock. On reliability, the older models were renowned for having slight issues with leaks from water pumps, and the Super Sport seats have been known for separation issues, both of which have been solved under warranty on most cars, so make sure this is being done on any car you're looking at. Have a read of owners' reviews of this car and you'll see that people generally absolutely adore owning one of these, hence it's definitely a good place to start on this list. Next up we have the 987 Porsche Cayman S with its 3.4-litre naturally aspirated flat-6 engine, which puts out 315 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in around 5 seconds in its more recent facelift. The Cayman is basically a 2nd generation Boxster with a hardtop roof, hence both keep the 987 internal designation. It's actually described as a fastback coupe thanks to that nice sloping rear end, which takes inspiration from the 904 coupe and takes further design principles from the legendary 356 and 550 coupe. So the two cars are very similar. Because of the roof on the Cayman as opposed to the Boxster, it needed some additional rigidity throughout, including suspension stiffness and some rear end rigidity too. The S stands for sport or special, and relative to the normal Cayman, it's not just a bigger engine, it also gets a 6-speed manual as standard in the pre-facelift example, before also getting a PDK after 2009. 2009 also brought an LSD as an option, while there were already a bunch of other options on the S like stiffer sport suspension, which includes active shock absorbers, as well as the Porsche carbon ceramic brakes. With these options, the Cayman S lapped the Nürburgring in 8 minutes 11 seconds with wall-to-roll at the wheel, faster than the Group B rallying legends lapped it in the 911 Carrera by 4 seconds. That 2009 facelift I keep mentioning included direct injection for the S, increasing the power and a few aesthetic changes here and there, though they do generally look pretty similar still. These start at around £11,000 for older models with high mileage, while 20 grand will get you a post-facelift model with around 60k on the clock, or an older example with around 40k. According to Porsche specialists, around 5% of Caymans suffer from bore scoring, with the 3.4S being particularly prone to it. So not a high likelihood at all, but if it happens, it will be expensive to fix. Condition, mileage, and service history are key on these anyway in terms of maintaining the resale value, and they very much sat at the same price for quite some time now. now. The post-facelift models have a lot of these issues designed out of them too, so it might be worth going newer, and also watch for corrosion on the front end caused by stone chips. I really like the 987S, and I think this will be a classic in the distant future for sure, as with most Porsches. On to the top 3 now, and in third we have the BMW M240i, which is basically a cheaper alternative to the much more sought after M2, thanks to its turbocharged 3-litre inline-6 engine, which puts out 335 brake horsepower, taking it from 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds. In 2014 they brought the 2 Series out as a successor to the 1 Series Coupe, meaning the 1 Series would always be a hatchback and the 2 Series would be a coupe instead. Despite its slightly smaller size, the US is actually the most popular market for the 2 Series, showing there is actually some space for subcompacts in a market that generally likes larger cars. Even though the M2 was marketed as the cheapest M model car, for many this was still out of reach from a price perspective, which meant that the M235i and subsequent updated M240i were the slightly more affordable performance examples, kind of like what a TTS is to a TTRS. The M240i replaced the M235i in 2016 with its B58 engine as opposed to the N55 in the older model. It came in both rear and all-wheel drive layouts, but here in the UK we haven't had the all-wheel drive X-Drive example sadly, so if you're elsewhere in the world you do get a slightly wider selection. One cool feature about the manual is automatic throttle blips on downshifts, meaning that your heel toe doesn't actually need to be up to scratch. It's a nice car on the interior, marking a key step change for BMW on their interior design, and comes with all the luxury features you might expect in what is marketed as an executive subcompact car. But my favourite thing about this is the exterior is actually very good looking, and a few subtle carbon M performance mods here and there do a very good job of making it look nice. These are listed for a minimum of around £17,000, around 70k on the clock, and for 20 grand you're looking at a 2017 model with under 10,000 miles on it. There are a couple of known build quality issues like condensation on the rear light and a rattly exhaust that came loose on some models, but ultimately the biggest problems with this car may be in the future. Some of the parts renowned for going wrong, like the Vanos, are right at the back of the engine, meaning that if they do go wrong when these cars are much older, they might cost a fair bit to fix. This is a really good looking and high performing car for the money though, and I am definitely a fan. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you are, hit the like button please, I would really appreciate it. If this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll do a part 2 at a much cheaper price bracket. And if you're new here and you haven't already, consider subscribing, it's free and it would gas me up, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date. Now time for the oldest, fastest and least German car on this list, mostly because it's from Blackpool. The TVR Cerbera with the TVR Speed 6 engine, a 4-litre inline-6 putting out 350 brake horsepower, which takes from 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. As is often convention with many TVRs, Cerbera derives from the ancient Greek legend Cerberus, a 3-headed beast that guards the gates of Hades. That becomes pretty clear when you hear what owners have to say about Cerbera ownership. Crazy, ridiculous, mental, silly, dangerous, these are all the kinds of adjectives you hear. Relative to all the other cars on this list then, it's a bit more of an enthusiast car rather than a straight up useful daily, as pretty much all the other cars on this list could be. Owners note the handling is quite sketchy, mostly due to the fact that the car isn't as rigid or planted as a Porsche 911 despite having so much power. It was actually a strange car for the new improved TVR brand at the time, being the first hardtop, first 2x2 and the first to be powered by TVR's own engines since Peter Wheeler took over leadership of the business. The interior on this is very Marmite. Some people think it's beautiful, others very much question the chaos that is taking place in there, with the 2-spoke steering wheel and massive centre console being particularly interesting features. You can also get some very rogue specs in there depending on what the original owner wanted. These come up every so often for under 20 grand, so be on the lookout, but generally they're listed for around £25,000. Some of the other engines do go for a lot more though. When buying one of these, you do have to realise that you'll likely need specialist help with maintenance, and the electrics are renowned for going wrong. Corrosion on chassis rails is also a known issue which you should definitely check for, and though the engine was loved when released, it also is known for having plenty of problems of its own, and owners suggest looking for one that has had an engine rebuild in its lifetime. Basically, this will be like owning a classic car to some degree, so be prepared for that and the potential hammering to your wallet. If you can stomach that, you will be getting a nice part of British motoring history, which I'm all about personally. And finally, taking the top spot, it's the only 4-door coupe on this list, the Mercedes-Benz CLA45 AMG, with the world's most powerful 4-cylinder engine in a production car, the 2-litre twin-scroll turbocharged inline-4 putting out 354 brake horsepower, taking it from 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, slightly slower than the TVR. Now, despite most coupes having 2 doors, it is possible to have a 4-door coupe thanks to the loose definition of what a coupe is, as it's mostly centered around a sloping roofline as opposed to a more defined boot stemming from a more angled rear window. The CLA sits on the same platform as the A-Class, and the 45 shares its entire drivetrain with the A45 AMG, meaning it remains an all-wheel drive monster with that massively powerful engine up front mated to a DCT 7-speed automatic transmission. It also retains the sport suspension and all other AMG features like the high-performance brakes, etc. If you can get one from 2016 or newer, you'll also benefit from more power at 375 brake horsepower, which is just carnage from an engine of that size. Though of course the car looks aggressive on the exterior with its specific AMG body kit and aero features, my personal favourite thing about Mercedes is how lush their interiors are, and with the CLA it remains a lovely yet focused and sporty place to be, just like the A45. The Recaro Performance bucket seats are comfy, and my only 2 complaints from my experience in one was that rear headroom could have been better for taller people, and there were some squeaks and rattles which suggest slightly worse build quality than you might hope for. £18,000 is the minimum you'll find these listed for, and 20 grand will get you a 2014 model with around 50 to 70,000 miles on the clock, depending on spec and condition. I mentioned the interiors are renowned for squeaks and rattles, which can be annoying to diagnose, and the gearbox is also known for some rough shifting on these, particularly at low speeds. Many owners who bought these new also ran into problems early in their experiences, with parts not being installed properly or being missed out altogether. But most of these lemons should have been fixed by now, worth checking the service history basically. I do really like the look of this car, but I'm not sure I'd choose it over an A45 AMG. Only time will tell which stands the test of time in terms of popularity. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, as I said, hit the like button. 1,000 likes and a part 2 will come. Massive thank you to the patrons as always for their continued support, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Listen.